Thank you for tuning in to Love in Your Hands with Cynthia Clark, soulmate palmist, spiritual teacher, love coach, author, and speaker. We're sharing stories of love and connection and lessons learned along the way. This podcast is sponsored by loveinyourhands.com, the place to ignite soulmate love fast using an innovative system to help you end loneliness and toxic relationships and elevate your vibrational energy to soulmate love and deeply compatible partners. Get started for free at loveinyourhands.com. And now here's your host, Cynthia Clark.
Hello there, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Cynthia Clark, and I am your soulmate palmist and spiritual teacher. And what I want to bring on the show is lessons of love and how we can understand ourselves from our hands. So your hands actually are the roadmap to everything about who you are. They can help you identify your true nature, your authentic self. And from understanding that information, you can also learn who you're most compatible with, and you can understand your emotional system and the deep secrets inside yourself, not just your conscious influences, but also your subconscious influences. And today I have a really special guest. I'm very excited to bring her in. Her name is Skylar Meister, and she is from Flagstaff, Arizona. And I often read for people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s. I've read for people all the way up into their 90s, in fact. So it's a real treat to actually meet somebody who's a little younger today. We're bringing in this wonderful person. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Skylar.
Thank you for letting me be on this.
Yeah, it's exciting. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and your background?
Okay, so I'm 16 years old and I go to high school. I'm going to be a junior this upcoming school year. I am in a program called Coconino Institute of Technology, which is in engineering. It's in a higher class and you have to get accepted into it to be able to go into it. And I just have a lot of fun in high school, even though people say that it's not that fun. It's pretty fun. And I have two different houses that I live at, one in Phoenix and one in Flagstaff. So I just switch off.
Okay, well, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds exciting. So have you started dating yet, or have you had any experiences with dating?
Yes, I have. I have dated in middle school, but it wasn't really like dating. It was more like holding hands and hugging. That was about it. And then I've had one boyfriend in high school, and then he broke up with me, and then I have a boyfriend right now.
Okay, tell us about the boyfriend that you have right now.
Okay, so he's going to be a senior, and his name is Moses, and he's 17 years old, and he likes to play video games all the time, but he's very helpful, and he loves to be around family more than friends.
Okay, and do you feel like you have a good relationship with him?
Yeah, I was friends with him before me and him started dating. So then that friendship turned into the dating because we had such a good bond together.
So do you play video games with him?
I have not played video games with him yet, but I do play video games.
Okay. Yeah, I went through my video game phase when I was a teenager too, so I definitely get that.
Yeah.
But how it ended up happening though was I used to own a restaurant. Not everybody knows this, but I owned my own restaurant from when I was 24 years old till I was, I ran it for about 7 years. And I ended up quitting my video game playing pretty much cold turkey when I started the restaurant because I suddenly didn't have any more time to play video games. So it was one of those things. I gave up TV, I gave up video game, I gave up everything. So I would say for all those video game people, enjoy it while you're young, because you're probably not going to get to do it forever. But anyway, I kind of miss it. Every once in a while I miss it, but it's okay. Life moves on, right? And we have other things to focus on.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So shall we take a look at your hands and discover who you are on the inside?
Yes.
So, have you ever had your hands read before?
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Tell me about that.
Well, kind of like off of like pictures and like people like scientists like off of what they have like seen. So I would
Mm-hmm.
look at my hands, but like not like read like how you're gonna do it.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Hand analysis is actually a deliciously complex science. And we could go for hours actually talking about your hands. But first thing I want to do is just bring up your hand. Here it is. Yay. So the first thing I noticed that actually reminded me of myself when I was young, I always had long nails as well. So you can kind of see here are my hands and my
Yeah.
nails. So the first thing I noticed was that you have long nails. So have you always had long nails, or is this a new thing?
I've had long nails, like I have them acrylic, but I've
Mm-hmm.
had long nails. So in 7th grade, I got acrylic, and then I didn't like them because I had to play volleyball, so they would like get stuck. So
Mm-hmm.
then I took them off, and then starting at the beginning of my sophomore year, I got them again. But I've had like long nails without the acrylic on it.
Okay, so the reason why I'm asking about that is that long nails do actually have an indication that you are tapping into more of your intuitive nature. Okay, so if you look at the fingers and the phalanges, so the upper phalanges represent the mental or ethereal realms, and the nails is actually extending the realm. So it's actually creating more of this upper phalange. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and you've already got pretty strong upper phalanges to begin with. So like if we look at the three levels of the fingers, the middle realms represent more of the practical or physical realm, and the lowers are more of like the security, the connection to the earth and that sort of thing. So we have sections. When we look at them, we want to see, okay, which section is big, which section is small, and what is that showing us? So the first thing I noticed with you was the long nails and the fact that your upper phalanges are quite pronounced, showing that you're strong in that ethereal realm, and you're tapping into more of that intuitive nature. Okay, and I can also tell this. You've got what's called droplets, which is another intuitive marker. So when we blow up your hand, you see how when you look at your finger kind of sideways, you'll see like this little bulge that will show up on the finger. We call those droplets. And it's not super common to see on people's fingers, but it adds another element of intuition. So I would definitely say that you need to pay attention to that inner voice. That's something that you could develop over time. Okay. The next thing I'm noticing with you is you have long fingers and a long rectangular palm. Okay, so this is how we determine your hand shape. And this is what we call a water hand. Okay, water hands are the most adaptable of all the hands. So all the hand shapes, by the way, you form your hand shape by the time you're about 6 years old. So this really represents like subconscious influences that get set or they gel and then they impact you for the rest of your life. So as a water person, you are going to be more in the emotional realm and you're definitely more in the adaptable realm because the water element can take the form of a liquid, a solid, or a gas. It's the only element that can do so, right?
Yeah.
So this tells me that you could actually go into a lot of different fields. And you could also date a lot of different type of people as well, like in terms of your who you might be attracted to, but you need to look at it in terms of how do I feel when I'm with this person, because you have such a strong intuitive attraction up here from your fingers. Okay, so I would actually recommend for you somebody who has what we call earth hands, which would be somebody who has the exact opposite hand shape as you. Okay, so they would have short, stubby fingers and they would have a big fat palm. Okay, so we call that an earth hand. And they tend to be also thicker. Okay, so your hand looks pretty thin just from looking at it in the picture. This is a classic water hand. So you would do well with an earth hand because that would be somebody who could ground you, because one of the challenges of water is having so many different interests. Because you are so adaptable, you could get sidetracked fairly easily. So you got to kind of watch out for that. Okay, makes sense so far?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so the next thing I like to look at is what we call your strong finger. So each of your fingers, by the way, represents a different aspect of yourself. The thumb represents your willpower. The index finger or Jupiter finger is how you look at yourself. The middle finger is Saturn. It's how you relate to your duties and responsibilities. Your ring finger is Apollo. It relates to how you show yourself to the world. And your little finger is Mercury. It relates to communications. Okay, so when I look at a strong finger, I look at the fingers relative to each other. And we do see, okay, so if we start over here in your index finger, Jupiter, it is slightly longer than your ring finger, okay? And it also juts a little bit away from the other fingers, which tells me that you are searching for more freedom, okay? So because that's a freedom finger right there. So you're getting, as you get older, this is not surprising, you're going to want to start to claim more and more of your independence. So that's where this little like separation is coming from. Some people have it pretty pronounced and they really want that Jupiter finger to kind of be away from all the other fingers. It's kind of interesting. Your thumb is actually what I would consider a little more of a high set thumb. And I would say it's pretty average in length as well. So that shows, basically how much do you want to be responsible for and how strong is that willpower? I would say you're right in alignment with other water hands. Okay, so I would just put that in the normal range. Your middle finger Saturn is looking pretty strong. So I do see a sense of duty. But I wouldn't say that it's like super long. I would actually say that your little finger is your strong finger because it is jutting out above this position right here. So the upper phalange of Apollo, it's coming up above that. So your archetype, what we would call your archetype, is known as the High Priestess. Okay, so the High Priestess, again, I love these long nails. Don't ever cut them. Don't ever cut them. The High Priestess is somebody who is in touch with their inherent wisdom. And that is somebody who can really dive inward and get all sorts of information. Basically, your inner world is going to guide your outer world. And I would recommend spending a fair amount of time in contemplation. I would recommend meditating for you. I think that would be really good for you. because you could get a lot of good information from that. You could also get a lot of good information from your ancestors. So maybe, I don't know, are your grandparents alive right now? Or,
Yes.
okay, I would tap into that wisdom because that's the inherent wisdom. So your parents, your grandparents, they could really, you could actually talk to them and ask them about lessons that they've learned along the way, and they could really assist you, especially as a high priestess, okay? Because you could really tap into that energy. And you could also do very well with finding a mentor. You know, this could be a teacher of some sort, or somebody who really understands this inherent wisdom, somebody who is connected to the the realms that are beyond the everyday. Okay, so that's something I would recommend for you as a high priestess. But you do need to also spread that outward into the world too. Okay, so your soulmate match is actually going to be, like I said, that earth hand. So you want to find somebody with those short fingers, square palm. And then your strong finger is what's known as the air finger. That's Mercury. So we would want somebody who has a strong fire finger. So the Earth Apollo is what we'd be looking at, which is known as the Sun archetype. That would be your very best match. So it would be somebody who has a long ring finger. And by long, I mean that it would come up above the halfway point of the middle finger, the upper phalange of the middle finger. And their index finger would definitely be at half a centimeter or more shorter than their ring finger. Okay, so that's how you could identify your soulmate match or your best match. And what that person would do for you is they would help bring out that radiant light. That's what they're good for. They have this grounding energy that helps you to see your potential and to really feel comfortable in expressing yourself and your inner self, especially that emotional self. Okay, so that's what I see with this hand. Okay, so let's take a look at, let's dive in a little bit to some of the lines. And I wanted to point out a couple of really cool things that I saw in your hands. And I only looked at this very briefly before the show, but I did notice this right away. Your headline is actually pretty exceptional. It represents the way that you think. Okay, now most people will have a headline that just connects to their lifeline. It comes straight out, and then it curves. Okay, so the length of the headline represents how much you think. I would say you're right on normal as far as that goes. It usually would end underneath the ring finger. Okay, so you're ending over here, kind of at the edge of your ring finger. But what is unusual about your headline is actually the start of it. And the start of it is actually coming up here into Jupiter. So you have what we call a solution brain. So somebody who is good at solving problems. Okay, and again, this all is going to come from your inherent wisdom. So you may not logically know why a solution is the way that it is, but you need to start trusting that intuitive voice, that gut check, that inner, like, I think this is the right way. You could really develop this. Okay, so I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but this type of formation is definitely not very common. So you do worry a little bit too. You got to watch out for that. Water types, they do tend to worry, and you can tell worries through the lines. When we have these little bubbles that kind of show up on the line, those represent stress. Okay, and I'm also, kind of the same way as you. I've got some bubbles on my headline. So, and my heart line. It's not uncommon to see. And you've also got it here on your heart line, which is very, very common. Another thing I see with your heart line, like if we're looking at your major lines, so the heart line is the uppermost line in your hand. And by the way, all the lines are changeable, so they are not necessarily going to stay this way. This is sort of like a snapshot of all of how you experience life up until this point. But they ebb and flow. Your lines are like rivers of energy that ebb and flow. And you've got a beautiful heart line that has sort of this spray of lines that kind of come out. You see this?
Yeah.
At the end of the line, and we call these the flirt lines. And I've talked about this in another show, by the way, if anybody's interested in learning more about these. But that shows that you have an ability to connect emotionally to all sorts of different types of people. And it can be very good when you need to deal with a lot of people who don't necessarily get along or who aren't necessarily like you. I consider this to be a talent marker, even though it's technically not a talent marker. But I would call it that because it's emotional flexibility. And you've got a lot of that going on in your hand. Now, I do have to give you, of course, a little warning about it as well, is sometimes you might not actually be aware of how do you feel about something. You can fall into the trap of, oh, well, this person feels this way, so therefore I can easily feel that way too. But then you might not even ask yourself, well, how do I really feel about it? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing to ask yourself. Okay. But that's something that I would recommend, that you just tune in and just ask yourself, how do I feel? Is a good question. Okay. Uh, let's see what else is showing up. Do you have any questions about your hands so far? Anything that you're wondering about?
No, but this is pretty interesting for me to learn about myself.
Yeah, it is good. And, if I were to say, like, what does your heart line want to do? I would say it wants to be earthy, because if we look at just like where is the strongest part of the line showing up, it starts underneath here, underneath your little finger, heads toward your middle finger. It's ending clearly under your middle finger before it starts veering off. So its primary essence, I would call it, is earth, which is somebody who kind of keeps more of their emotions in check. So you're not necessarily blurting out what you're feeling all the time. You're kind of keeping it in, like you're going to filter it. And you also need to take care of yourself first, emotionally speaking. So, and this could be a challenge with flirt lines. Again, it's sort of like, well, everybody needs something and they're always asking me for something.
Yeah.
But with an earth heart line, it's like, well, check in with yourself. Ask yourself, well, what do I need right now? And can I satisfy what I need and what they need, without having a conflict? Because ultimately, water types can be very agreeable, and they generally don't look for conflict. And I would definitely say that's the case with you, because your lower phalanges are not the strongest of your zones. Again, going back to your fingers. So, for example, on your Jupiter finger, this is the lower phalange is known as your zone of boundaries. I would say it's a good strong section. I wouldn't say that it's weak, but I also wouldn't say that it's strong, if that makes sense. It's
Yeah.
just like you've got it, but it's like it's not really like I don't see you like forcing yourself on to other people. And there's a little bit of a shyness factor with you as well, because your Apollo finger is a little shorter than your Jupiter, which is the same with me too. I totally get that. And the lower section, which it also has to do with like wanting other people to see you, is really not that strong. So I could see you really kind of being that support person for others and working more behind the scenes in a lot of ways. Okay. I think that's more your comfort zone anyway,
Yeah.
which is good. There's nothing wrong with that. If we don't have our back team working for us, we probably have a lot of trouble. Right?
Right.
So, also as a water person, I recommend that you connect with your element. So that means drink plenty of water throughout your life. Connect to, and here we are living in Arizona, which a lot of this is desert, right?
Yeah.
But occasionally we need to connect to the water. So if you can get to a river or a lake or the ocean once in a while, I do recommend that for you. Swimming pools are good, and if you don't have that, like take a long bath or a long shower can actually help you to kind of just purge any emotional stuff that you're picking up from other people. Okay. So give yourself permission to do that. All right. So let's take a look at your other hand. Which hand is your active hand, by the way? Which hand do you write with?
My right.
Your right hand. Okay, so that was your active hand that we were just looking at. Your, or I'm sorry, that was your passive hand. This is your active hand. Okay, so your active hand, you do have a very unusual marker on this hand. And let's take a look at it. Your headline and your heart line are joining on this hand. You see how you have this one line that kind of goes straight across your hand?
Yeah.
That is only in about 3% of people. Okay, so I don't know if you've ever heard of this line or been told about this line, but it is uncommon and it is called a simian line. Okay, have you ever heard of this?
No.
No, okay. So like I said, it happens in about 3% of the population where the heart line, which is your emotions, joins with your headline, which is your thinking. And it creates one solid line that goes across your hands. And it is considered a talent marker again. So you've got some talent going on. And it's the talent of intense focus, because what's happening is your feelings and your thinking is literally joining together and it's creating this intensity. Okay, so what I would recommend for you is asking yourself what really gets you excited, what gets you passionate about something. You could actually become a very high specialist in whatever area you choose to study. Okay, and I don't say this lightly. My teacher actually had this marker in his hands, who was a very prominent palm reader, and it's really pretty cool. Okay, so you can be proud of your simian line. Now I see a little stress showing up here. I'm not sure what this is. Is it like a callus or some sort of stress marker right here underneath your Jupiter finger? This is, by the way, I look at cuts and things like that also in the way of as like a stress. Okay, so any type of callus that we build up or anything like that can actually create some stress in the area where it is located. Sometimes it can be a good opener too, though, so I don't always view it as a negative. It can sometimes be very positive. In this case, it's in your realm of Jupiter, which is your vision and leadership. Okay, so it's asking you to look at the bigger picture of things and try to take a step back and really ask yourself, what is it that I want to see and create in my life? Okay, that's what this little marker is saying. Okay, and you don't have to know the answer right now. It's okay if you don't, but it's asking you to ask the question. Okay. And as a high priestess, I'm telling you, you're going to get some good answers once you start asking them. Okay. One of my best friends, by the way, is a high priestess, and she is a very successful psychic medium. and she has beautiful high priestess hands. And she is really got a good heart to her, and she is, I consider her a very, very nice person. So you could totally tap into any of those type of arts, the psychic realm, the intuitive realm, and you could really get some skill in those areas. So just FYI. Okay. But yeah, you definitely need to ground yourself a little bit. We look at this lifeline. The base of the lifeline represents your stability. Maybe it's because you're going back and forth between two places all the time that this is a little bit weak. But again, that's where an earth person or a really grounded person could help you. So that's something I recommend for you. So in a partner, look for those big, stubby hands.
I'll just be looking. Do you have big stubby hands? Okay, I can work with you.
Yeah, that's just really grounding. The earth element is so grounding for you. Very, very, it feels very safe for you as well. So, the water really ultimately nourishes the earth. When you think of like rain falling in the desert, it's very nourishing actually for both of you. It's very synergistic. So that's something that we would want to tap into. So anyway, that is what I see for you. Very cool hands. Do you have any questions before we wrap up?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show. It's been a pleasure reading for you, and I hope you get some little, nuggets of wisdom to take with you.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about it.
And thank you, listeners, for tuning in. And if you would like to have your hands read, you can submit to be on the show. Just go to lovinyourhands.com/podcast, and you can apply to be on the show. And of course, my message, as always, is that life has more meaning when it is shared. So if you're looking for a partner, you absolutely have a soulmate partner who would be the best for you. And the answer is in your hands. So thanks for joining us, everyone, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you for listening to Love in Your Hands. Please rate, review, and subscribe to show your support. Have a question for Cynthia? Just post a comment. This podcast is sponsored by lovinyourhands.com, the place to find soulmate love fast. Start your free Soul Connection membership today, upload your hand photo, discover your relationship archetype, and start finding soulmate matches. Just go to lovinyourhands.com to get started.